Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the fall of the mutant story arc, we do pick up with the Uncanny X-Men and their part in this crossover. Because remember, this was not really a proper crossover. You did have three different X-Men teams at the time, but they really did not cross over with one another. They were all kind of handling their own certain problems. So for example, you had X-Factor dealing with Apocalypse, while you had the X-Men dealing with something else completely different. Now, when it comes to our heroes, they're on their way over to Dallas. And the reason why, because they're looking for their team leader, Storm, who went to Dallas to find Forge, because Forge has the ability to finally give Storm her powers back. But they haven't heard from Storm in a good while, and so they're trying to head there to see what in the world is going on with her. Now, before we are able to dive into the main fall of the mutant storyline, we have to pick up with another tie-in. And this time will be the Incredible Hulk issue number 340, where you have Wolverine and the Hulk fighting again for the only second time in Marvel's history. The last time these two characters fought against each other was back in the Incredible Hulk number 180. And so for a lot of people, this was an actual tie-in for the fall of the mutant story arc, because it does take place right before you have the Uncanny X-Men get into their main chapters of the entire story. And so we get the chance to see Wolverine fight against the Hulk. Now, there are some things I do want to talk about when it comes to the Hulk around this point in time in Marvel Comics. See, the Hulk is gray, and the reason why, because there was a storyline where Bruce Banner and the Hulk were finally separated from one another, except they realized that Bruce could not survive without the Hulk, and so they had no choice but to go ahead and re-emerge the two characters back into one. Now, after doing that, the Hulk was no longer green. He became, well, gray, like he was when he first appeared in Marvel Comics. Now, when it comes to Bruce, he is currently hanging out with Clay Quartermain and also Rick. And the reason why, because there are a stockpile of gamma bombs out there in the world that could possibly go off. And you are talking about the idea of producing more people turning into Hulks in the world. And that would be a very horrible situation. And so you have our three heroes trying to find that stockpile of gamma bombs. Now, they're kind of on this cross-country road trip, and they just arrived in Dallas, Texas. Now, when they do arrive, there is a blizzard out of nowhere, and they're in this vehicle, but because of the blizzard, they have to pull over. Now, for the Hulk, he's very upset because he has been inside the vehicle for a very long time, and so he wants out to stretch his legs. Now, you do have Rick wondering, is that really a good idea to let the Hulk out in Dallas? But you have Clay say, could you or me really stop the man if we wanted to? Which honestly is no. Now, the Hulk and his team are not the only team also arriving in Dallas. You also have the X-Men arriving as well, because again, they're trying to find their team leader, Storm, who came to Dallas looking for Forge. Now, they're also being affected by this blizzard. And matter of fact, you have the DFW airport tell them, you guys cannot land here. Like, matter of fact, you are causing a lot of issues while being in the airspace of our airport. You have to get the heck out of here. And on top of that, we have no way to help you land properly in our airport. Now, you do have Wolverine be Wolverine by saying something smart to tower control. But while they are talking, well, they realize something is coming towards them very fast. It's the Hulk. Now, they don't see the Hulk, but you do have Wolverine able to make the Blackbird dodge whatever was coming their way, which again was the Hulk. Now, because they were able to dodge the Hulk continued on to hit another plane that was nearby the Blackbird, and that plane begins to fall out of the sky. Now, you have Wolverine realize the plane is calling Mayday, and so Wolverine tells Rogue to get out there to use her powers to help land the plane properly on the ground. But he also tells Rogue to get rid of the engine inside of the plane. Just throw it somewhere, but pray to God it does not crash into somebody else. Which it does, because it does crash right on top of the Hulk, which does make him very angry and wondering, why in the world did a random engine just crash on me? Now, Hulk has no idea that he had hit a plane. He knew he hit something, but because of the blizzard, he did not get an actual proper look. Now, when we pick up with the Hulk again, well, he began to get very hungry. And so he went out of his way to find a food truck, which honestly was not hard to do because of the blizzard. No vehicles are able to travel through the actual blizzard. And so once he finds a food truck, well, he begins to eat everything inside of it, but you didn't have the National Guard appear. Now, when the National Guards appear, they see the Hulk and they begin to freak out and they begin to shoot the Hulk. And you have the Hulk get very upset about these guys shooting at him. And so you have the Hulk try to fight against the guards. Now, while they're fighting, a bullet does cause the vehicle to actually blow up. And the flames of the vehicle travels to a nearby apartment building. And so with that apartment building now being on fire, you have Wolverine tell his team, hey guys, go deal with that fire. I am going to figure out what in the world actually caused that fire. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, he already knew the Hulk was nearby. And the reason why, because when it came to the Hulk hitting that plane earlier, Wolverine did some, detective work by using his abilities to see what happened to the plane, and he picked up the scent of the Hulk. And when it came to the vehicle that caught on fire that led to the apartment building getting on fire, once again, Wolverine had picked up the scent of the Hulk, knowing the Hulk was nearby. Now, while Wolverine is wondering what to do, you then have the Hulk appear and begin the process of fighting against Wolverine. Now, when it comes to our two characters fighting against each other, this is really important because, like I said earlier, this is most likely the second time these two characters had ever fought against each other in Marvel Comics, but they're both trying to prove something to each other. Let me explain. So when it comes to Wolverine, the last time he was fighting against the Hulk, he was kind of like a savage beast that was assigned to bring the Hulk down. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, he's part of the X-Men. And with him being part of the X-Men, he has grown as a person. And he knows to try not to be a savage person anymore, but to try to be an actual person. And so when it comes to Wolverine, he's like, hey Hulk, I don't want to fight. Matter of fact, I'm leaving. Leave me alone. But for the Hulk, this is where his part of the battle comes in, what he is trying to prove. Because to the Hulk, he has gotten smarter ever since Bruce and him had re-emerged as one again. And so Hulk has gotten smarter, and he wants to prove to all the different people that he had fought over the years that he is no longer that dumb green, huge monster. He's now somewhat intelligent gray monster. And so that is his reason why he wants to fight against Wolverine, but to also prove that he can actually think of a strategy when it comes to fighting against different people. And so you have two characters begin to try to show what they have done over the years. The problem is they're both failing at it, because you have the Hulk kind of showing that he's still kind of the big dumb gray angry monster. He's not properly thinking of how to take down Wolverine. And when it comes to Wolverine, he's not being, rational. He's all like, what? You have hit me so many times. You have brought back the old me, the angry me. And so I want to get rid of you. And so you have the two characters fight against each other. Now the fight is actually stopped thanks to Clay Quartermain using a weapon that's really powerful enough to do some damage to the Hulk. But with that weapon, you have Clay say, "Hey Hulk, what are you doing? You are wasting your time here fighting against Wolverine while you and us should be out there looking for all those bombs that could possibly go off." And so once you have Clay kind of get that message through Hulk's mind, you have Hulk realize, yeah, he's right. Even though I don't like the guy, he's right. And he leaves. But he kind of tells Wolverine, this is not over. And that wraps up this tie-in for the Fall of the Mutant story arc. And so then we jump into Uncanny X-Men number 225. Now, we do pick up with Colossus, and just in case you forgot, Colossus has been gone for a short while now. And the only reason why, because back in the Mutant Massacre storyline, Colossus was seriously injured, to the point where he was no longer able to be on the team until he properly healed, alongside with Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde, who were also injured. Now, this is Colossus beginning the process of possibly coming back to the team. Now, you do have Colossus in the city where you had the X-Men fight the Juggernaut a couple videos ago. Now, when it comes to Colossus, while being there, he kind of realized that the X-Men are being blamed for what happened to this city. Even though the X-Men were the ones who had stopped the Juggernaut, they're still getting most of the blame because the city was completely wrecked. And you have Colossus finding out by hearing a bunch of children argue if mutants are actually human. Now, there is one boy who kind of says mutants are humans and they're good and bad mutants, but you have the rest of the children look in the idea of mutants not being humans at all. And you have Colossus try his best to, clarify things to make the kids have a better idea of what mutants truly are, but unfortunately, most of the kids are not trying to listen. But after dealing with the children, out of nowhere, Colossus is confronted by a young lady. Now, when it comes to this young lady, she does ask Colossus, can he draw her? And matter of fact, she'll pay him for his drawing. Now, Colossus, he believes that he is a good artist, but not that great. But he's still down with the idea of doing artwork for somebody who is going to pay him. Now, while he's drawing her, well, out of nowhere, she disappears. But then there's a chess piece left behind. But the chess piece looks just like Colossus, and that is very confusing for our hero. But while you had Colossus examining the chess piece, you then had those same children reappear and begin to throw fireworks at Colossus. And the only reason why they're doing that is because Colossus got in the middle of their argument. But while you had these kids throwing fireworks, well, out of nowhere, Colossus begins to turn back into his metal form. Now, this right here is going to be very huge in the next couple sections that we are about to talk about. But we have to jump over to a different character. And so we then jump over to a place that's between realities. And we do pick up with the character known as the Adversary. Now, the Adversary is the main bad guy for the last couple of videos that we have been doing. He is this demonic being from a different reality that had been trying to get into Earth's reality to begin the process of, recreating the universe in his own image. Now, he has been stopped over the years by Native Americans, but the last person who was supposed to stop him was Forge. Now remember, at the end of our last video, Storm was tricked by the Adversary to think that Forge had just gone crazy, or Forge was possibly being controlled by the Adversary, to only find out that Forge was never being controlled by the Adversary. That matter of fact, Forge was trying to close the portal to not let this demonic being be able to reach Earth's reality. But Storm had stabbed Forge at the end of our last video, which then gave way for the Adversary to begin the process of possibly getting rid of the entire universe. Because when it comes to Adversary, he's better known as this great trickster. He's able to trick people to help him achieve his goal. But he's also known as the Great Weaver, because his goal is to keep changing the universe until he is actually satisfied. Now we do see him talking to Lady Roma. Now, when it comes to Lady Roma, I'm not going to really dive into it right now who she actually is, but she is the daughter of Merlin, and she comes from Otherworld. Now, I want to say around this time that she was the guardian of the Omniverse. I could be wrong about that. If I am, please let me know in the comments below. If I'm correct, again, please let me know in the comments below. But when it comes to Lady Roma, she's trying to fight against the adversary, and apparently the two characters are playing against each other in a game of chess. Now, it's not really chess, but all the different pieces on the chessboard are different characters who are being affected by this storyline, mainly the X-Men. Now, when it comes to adversary, he believes that he has won only because he had removed Storm and Forge off the board. But it seems like Lady Roma is talking about the idea that he has no idea about her other pieces, including Colossus. But getting back over to Colossus, I want to dive into what is currently happening with him. So after having that huge argument with the children, but being attacked by them and going into his metal form, we kind of find out that Colossus is no longer able to just easily turn off his metal form. And this is most likely because of his injury from the Mutant Massacre storyline. And so because of that injury, Colossus just has to try really hard to turn human, but at the same time, he can't keep that form for a very long time. But you also have Colossus in this section expressing the idea of how upset he is when it comes to mutants being hated on, especially the X-Men, a team of characters that came together to not just help Charles Xavier achieve his goal, but to also help out the human race whenever they're in danger. And so when it comes to Colossus, he does not understand why the human race hates the X-Men so much, why the X-Men are being blamed what happened to their city, where in reality it was the Juggernaut. Now, you also have Colossus tell us that when it comes to his, powers not working properly, he's also a whole lot stronger, and so he has to learn how to control his strength. Now, he is able to call up his sister, Ileana, aka Magic, and she appears out of nowhere. Now, this is one of those quick, brief crossovers between the two X-Men teams, but it's only for a couple seconds here, because you have Colossus asking his sister, can you take me over to where the X-Men are at? And she said, yes, just come with me, and I'll teleport you over there with them. But speaking of the X-Men, they do arrive in Dallas, where they do arrive at the place that belongs to Forge. Now, Rogue is flying around on the outside of the building, but she is able to look inside, and she can tell the place is completely wrecked. And you have Rogue wondering what the heck happened there. And she tells Wolverine what she saw. Now, when it comes to Logan, he tells his team, hey, stay behind. Let me go inside first to see what in the world happened here. And then maybe later on, you guys can come in as well. Except when you have Wolverine walk in, every single machine that was left behind to protect the place begins to attack Wolverine. And so you have the rest of the X-Men work together to get Wolverine out of there. The problem is, as soon as they were able to get out of there, they are confronted by Freedom Force. Now, remember, when it comes to Freedom Force, they were originally known as, well, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the second version of the team that was being led by Mystique. Now, over the years, she has switched sides and joined the government. Now, the only reason why she has joined the government, because they're going to forgive every single one of them for the crimes that they had forgotten if they had to do different missions for the government, like for example, go after different criminals, especially mutants, and bring them in. Now, we have seen Freedom Force in other books like X Factor, but this is them coming after the X-Men to arrest the X-Men. Now, they're not only there to arrest them, they're also there to help protect the X-Men because of Destiny. Remember, in our last video, Destiny told Mystique that she had been looking into different futures to see what would happen to their adopted daughter, Rogue. In every single future that she looked into, Rogue and the X-Men were dead. And so it was her goal to kind of find a way to save Rogue and the X-Men to protect their daughter. And so even though Freedom Force is here to arrest the X-Men, they're also trying to protect them. But the X-Men are technically not listening, and it does lead into a battle between both sides. Now, while you have both sides fighting against each other, you also have Colossus appear. And when he does appear, he does kind of help out when it comes to fighting against Blob, but you didn't have Destiny wanting to say again, we are not here to fight you guys. But in the middle of the fight, you didn't have each side being able to grab a hostage. Freedom Force was able to grab Rogue while you had the X-Men grab Mystique. Now you have the X-Men retreat back inside the building of Forge, only so they can think of a game plan on how they're going to deal with Freedom Force. So while you have the X-Men hiding inside the building, out of nowhere, the sky is ripped open and a beam of light shoots right down on the building. And we're left to wonder what in the world is possibly going to happen to the X-Men. And so then we dive into Uncanny X-Men number 226. Now, when we do, we pick up with the X-Men hiding out in the building that belonged to Forge, while you have Freedom Force just standing there, literally doing nothing at all. Now, the reason why they're not doing anything because of Destiny. She's freaking out about what could happen to the X-Men, and she clarifies that when it comes to what she saw in the future, if anybody is inside the building that belonged to Forge, something bad is about to happen to them, but she has no idea what. And that is very, very huge. And so you have the X-Men hear from Mystique what Destiny is actually talking about, or what Mystique had learned from Destiny before they arrived at this mission. And so you have Mystique say, we have to leave the building, but we also have to get the other people away from the building as well in the surrounding area, just in case anything bad happens to them. But you didn't have Longshot say, hey guys, I'm new to your world, but does your sun usually beam down in one area and that's it? Because they were battling in the night, and out of nowhere, this beam of light is glowing right on top of Forge building. And now our heroes are wondering what's happening. Now we do jump over to two reporters, and their names are Manoli and also Neil. Now when it comes to these two characters, they do remind us what's happening in Dallas at the moment. An entire blizzard in the middle of the summer, which we already know should not be possible. As someone who lives in Texas, let me tell you, that should most definitely not happen at all. But either way, when it comes to these two reporters, they're realizing that a lot of weird things have been happening in Dallas over the last couple of days. The blizzard and now this beam of light that's surrounding this particular area. Now they are the first two to arrive at the scene when it comes to all the different news channels in Dallas, but their goal is to get the news out first, to warn everyone what they are currently seeing. We then jump over to Freedom Force and their few hostages of the X-Men, where you have Dazzler being the one to wake up first out of all of the hostages. Now you have Dazzler also realize that the Freedom Force team is not looking at her, so she should be able to use her powers to blind them just temporarily long enough so that her, Psylocke, and Rogue can get the heck out of there. The problem is Spiral was unaffected by her actual attack, and so Spiral was able to begin to attack Dazzler in the most brutal kind of way. She grabs Destiny mask, puts it on Dazzler's face, and then stabs the mask to the face of Dazzler with a knife. So we're left to wonder, is the mask really stuck on Dazzler's face? If it is, that really sucks. Now, she does go after Psylocke as well and kind of express the idea that she does not like Psylocke at all because she is a psychic. But before you have Psylocke being able to be killed off by Spiral, you did have Rogue appear. And you have Rogue try her best to also battle against the six-armed sorcerer. We did pick up with Storm and Forge, and we kind of find out our two heroes are on another Earth. Now, this comes after Storm has stabbed Forge in the chest, which means that Forge was unable to close the portal that had allowed Adversary to come into the other Earth, the main Earth. And so the Adversary had put Storm and Forge on a complete different Earth as a way to say, this is your prison. But now you have Storm wondering, what's the point of that? Because if we are two people who have the ability to actually stop you, why would you give us an actual prison where we can live a normal, peaceful life? What is the purpose of that? Now, before Forge is able to explain things to Storm, you did have Forge pass out once again because of his stab wound. But when we jump back over to the main Earth, the main Marvel universe, we kind of find out that the Adversary is beginning to work on reality. You have reality changing all over Dallas, Texas. Different kind of creatures popping up left and right. Different kind of beings from different worlds are coming into Dallas, Texas, attacking innocent people. Now you're probably wondering, hey, where are the Avengers? Where are the Fantastic Four? Where are the rest of the superhero teams? Well, they can't come to help out because what's happening in New York at the moment. Because while this was happening, X Factor was dealing with Apocalypse. And so that is why you don't have a crossover between X Factor and the X-Men, because they're so far apart from one another, but they're also dealing with two different kinds of things. But either way, you have Wolverine and Mystique agreed to call a truce, to work together to help protect the innocent people from all these different kinds of creatures that have been brought here by the Adversary. Now, we do jump back over to Storm and Forge, and I want to establish the idea that time moves differently on this other Earth. Let me explain, because the last time we saw Storm and Forge was still recovering after Storm had stabbed him. But now we see our two heroes being able to travel across this new world. But months have passed by between the two moments. And so that is how Forge is able to travel now. Now, when it comes to Forge and Storm, well, they travel to the same location that you had Forge try to use his magical powers to close the portal on the Adversary back on the other Earth. And so the reason why they traveled to the same location on this Earth was hoping to get back home to their own reality. But the problem is the Adversary made sure that all different traveling points are different areas on this Earth and possibly other Earths across the multiverse cannot be used by Forge. And so our heroes are technically stuck there. Now, when it comes to Forge, he's really down with the idea of just staying here and actually making a life. Now, for Storm, she can't do that because she feels responsible for the idea that she released the Adversary on their home Earth, and now their home Earth could possibly be erased. But she's also still dealing with the idea that she was tricked by the Adversary, because the last two videos she believed that she was hanging out with Naze, the guy who was kind of like a father to Forge, to only find out that was never Naze at all. And you have Forge say, you know what, in my heart I believe that Naze has been gone for a good while. But again, when it comes to the Adversary, he is a great trickster. But you have Storm walk away to kind of have some time to herself to actually think, could her and Forge actually build a life on this new Earth? Now, back on the main Earth, we do pick up with the X-Men and Freedom Force still trying to help out innocent people, but this leads into an interview between Mystique and one of our reporters from earlier, where you have our reporters asking Mystique, why are you working alongside with the X-Men? You are Freedom Force. You were assigned and put together to go after mutants like these guys right here and other bad mutants across the world. But it's Mystique saying, hey, look around you. Right now, we have no choice but to work alongside with them. But then you have Havoc jump in and say, what makes a hero? Please tell us what makes a hero, because multiple times over the years, the X-Men have gone out of their way to help protect this Earth. Not just themselves, but humans as well. And here y'all go again, trying to paint this picture as the X-Men being evil, that mutants are evil. What the heck is wrong with you guys? Now, when it comes to our heroes, they have no idea that all of this is being done by the adversary. But they do realize it has to be somebody with a huge amount of magic. And the way they learn is that you have Spiral trying to undo what she did to Dazzler earlier, with the idea of stabbing a knife through a mask onto Dazzler's face. But the problem is, now Spiral is unable to fix her spell, to undo her spell. And she tells Colossus and Psylocke, it seems like someone outside of my magical abilities is actually blocking me. And that tells our heroes, okay, that means we're going up against someone with a huge amount of magical ability. And so you then have our heroes begin to learn about the adversary by a group of Native Americans who do appear, because all realities are being mushed together into one pile of goo, technically. And so you do have this group of Native Americans tell Crimson Commando what is currently happening here. Is someone known as the adversary, and this is where our heroes are able to get a small bit of information about their enemy, but unfortunately the Native Americans are killed off by a group of racist people. Well, it seems to be racist people, but either way, you do have them go ahead and kill off the Native Americans. And so now our heroes are unable to learn anything about the adversary like they were hoping to. Now, getting back over to the other Earth, we kind of find out another year has passed by since the last time we saw our two heroes. But you have Storm coming back to Forge and realizing that he was able to build an entire house for him, but being powered up by solar power energy. Either way, you did have our two heroes being able to come back together and re-establish their love for one another. Now, here's the thing, because now the question is, what is our heroes going to do now if they're going to stay here on this other Earth, or the possibility of trying to find a way back home to their Earth? And so then we jump back over to the X-Men. Now, when we do, we pick up with Colossus going over to comfort Destiny. Now, this is really important because this is where Colossus learns that Destiny has been looking into multiple timelines to see what could possibly happen to the X-Men if they do things differently in each and every single timeline. But she only got the same outcome over and over again, where the X-Men have died. Except when Colossus walked over, she's kind of like, wait a second, you are not in any of my visions at all, which means that you have the possibility to change things when it comes to the future of your team. Now, she does tell Colossus that she has seen all different kinds of futures. If the Earth is going to survive, the X-Men have to die. That is the only way to save the future of the Earth. And so you have Colossus agree and decides to kind of be the one person to sacrifice himself to hopefully save the day. Now, Psylocke sees what Colossus is trying to do, and you have Psylocke read the mind of Colossus. Now, once she does, she learns that Colossus had an entire conversation with Lady Roma. And again, she is the guardian of the Omniverse. And so you have Psylocke say, wait a second, Colossus, if you were technically contacted by Lady Roma, that means she's one, trying to help us, or two, she needs our help to make sure all reality is put back in place. But either way, we have to go to the very top of Forge building, Eagle Plaza, to hopefully end all of this mess. But getting back over to Storm and Forge, you have our two heroes wondering, okay, what could be our next move here? We can stay here on this Earth and begin the next human race on this Earth and then become gods as we pass on. or we can try to go back home to our Earth and help out our friends to defeat the adversary. But the thing is, Storm's wondering, okay, first idea, not really bad. Second idea, also not bad, but the problem is we have no way getting back home. Except you have Forge say, oh, don't worry. While you were gone, I kind of thought of a new way that can help us get back home. But we have to go to the very top of that mountain right there to be able to achieve that goal. But getting back over to the main Earth, you have the X-Men and also Freedom Force working together and trying to reach the top of Eagle Plaza. But on their way there, they're being confronted by different kinds of obstacles because reality is constantly changing. Now, they also have a fellow state trooper with them as well, who's kind of helping out, but he is a huge racist towards really anybody who's not him. So mutants, Asians, and the list goes on. But either way, you didn't have Wolverine tell Mystique to take her and her team back to the outside area of the building. And the reason why, because he wants to make sure that if this is a trap, at least there'll be a team left behind to continue to help out the innocent people of this area. And so let the X-Men die, but hopefully you guys can live on. Now, this is really a huge moment because one of the reporters is still there as well, recording all of this to hopefully show the world what the X-Men are trying to stand for. The idea that mutants are not evil, that mutants are humans, that mutants are just trying to help out the human race, which is honestly pretty cool. Now, getting back over to Storm and Forge, this is where we're also going to establish the return of Storm's powers. While she was traveling around this new world, Forge was also able to create a device that should help restore her powers. And once he does use it on her, at first it doesn't work properly, but then it does. So guys, the ones who've been in my comment section saying, I don't like Powerless Storm, don't worry, she finally has her powers back once again, which honestly, pretty great. But either way, you didn't have our two heroes begin the process of traveling back over to their Earth, the main Marvel universe. But while doing that, we kind of find out back on the main Earth, when it came to that state trooper earlier, it was really the adversary pretending to be someone else. But now he realized what's happening, that Storm and Forge are trying to make their way back over to this Earth. And so now you have our villain here kind of upset, but also kind of down to accept their challenge. And this leads us into the final chapter of Fall of the Mutants for the X-Men. And so that leads us into the final chapter for the Fall of the Mutants for the X-Men. Because while you have the X-Men inside the Eagle Plaza, you do have everyone outside wondering, will the X-Men actually survive? But on top of that, they're also wondering what could happen to the rest of the world if the X-Men fail. Now, luckily for the X-Men, one of the reporters is with them inside Eagle Plaza. And the reason why I say luckily, because on the outside, they are able to see what the X-Men are going up against, thanks to the guy carrying around a camera that's feeding back over to the television inside the van. And so you have the Freedom Force team and also the other reporter being able to see what the X-Men are going up against. Now, there is something I forgot to mention, because yes, she's been part of the team, but she doesn't really play a huge role in this storyline, and that would be Madeline Pryor. And when it comes to Madeline Pryor, let's not forget that she is married to Cyclops around this time, but she has no idea where Cyclops is at, and on top of that, Cyclops has no idea that she is alive, because over in X Factor, he believes that his wife is currently dead, not knowing that she's alive and with the X-Men. Matter of fact, when it comes to the X-Men, they've never really seen X Factor yet, and so they have no idea that X Factor is Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and Archangel be the new team of mutants. But either way, because she was with the X-Men, she also went inside Eagle Plaza. Now, while being inside Eagle Plaza, she sees a flashback of young Forge. Now, there is something that some fans may forget about Forge, is that he fought in a war, and because of that, he lost an arm and leg. Now, when it comes to Forge, though, we kind of find out that there was a time where he tried to use the powers of the adversary to actually defeat people who had killed off his fellow soldiers to help him win a certain battle. And so he uses souls of his fallen soldiers to open up a portal from the adversary's realm and release a bunch of demonic beings to kill off the other soldiers who had just killed off his friends. Now, once he realized what he has done, he then called in a airstrike. And now Madeline kind of saw this flashback, and she has some bad thoughts about Forge. Now, getting back over to Storm, Forge, and also Lady Roma, we see that they're being held captive by, well, the adversary, but he also took over the Starlight Citadel. And so with them being able to control that, he believes that sooner or later, he should be able to take over reality completely and get rid of this universe. But again, he has no idea that Lady Roma has a certain character that she is hoping that could possibly help them win this battle against adversary. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, you have the X-Men see the Starlight Citadel, and their main goal is to find a way up there. But the problem is, every single time they try to get close to it, they get sent right back down, crashing into the ground. Now, they do have a bright idea on how they're going to get up there, and that involves Longshot. See, when it comes to Longshot, his bones are very hollow, so he should be able to carry all of them up there to the Starlight Citadel by riding the currents. Now, I don't feel like that would work in real life, but hey, who knows? So you do have our heroes being able to fly up to the Starlight Citadel, and that begins the battle against them and the adversary. And so with the X-Men being able to ride the currents and actually arrive at the Starlight Citadel, with Longshot being the first to go in there, he does throw his knives right at the adversary. Now, here's the thing. It actually does damage to the adversary because his knives are covered in iron. Iron is a certain weakness for the adversary. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, he believes any kind of metal should be able to do damage to the adversary. But you have our bad guy here tell Wolverine, no, that is not the case. Your claws are covered in adamantium, and that would not do any kind of damage to me at all. But Colossus, who can turn his body into iron, can actually cause some damage to the adversary. And with Colossus being the hidden piece of Lady Roma, he was able to do a lot of damage to the adversary. And with him doing that, Rogue was then able to begin the process of absorbing the powers of adversary. Now, with her doing that, she was able to open up a portal to begin the process of sending him back home where he came from. And so that leads into the X-Men trying to find a way to push the adversary all the way inside the portal and then actually close it. But that runs into one problem. See, when it comes to the adversary, he is a magical power being, meaning that the only way to defeat him is by using magic. And so even though the portal is open, they can't push him all the way inside because all their powers are not magic based. And Rogue is using her newfound powers that she had gained from adversary to keep the portal open long enough to send him through. But then, even if he goes through the portal, how are you going to close the portal? Because the portal has to be closed by somebody who knows how to. And again, Rogue doesn't. Now, luckily for our heroes, Forge does. And so you have Forge begin the process of trying to push the adversary through the portal. But here comes the next problem. How are they going to close it? And Forge says, we must use your guys' souls to be the reason why the portal is bound closed to keep him away from this reality. You will be the key that will lock away his reality from ours. Now, for the X-Men, even though they hate the idea that they're going to have to sacrifice themselves to be the reason why the adversary is defeated, they know it's the right thing to do as a way to protect the Earth. Now, something else to mention is that when it comes to the reporter that had been following the X-Men around, he still has his tape recorder or his camera, and he's recording everything that is currently happening. Now, this is really important because, like we saw in X Factor, because X Factor went out of their way to help defeat Apocalypse to protect New York, it's now the X-Men finally being able to have proof that they're not evil. They're getting proof they are really a good team who are now going out of their way to give up their lives to save the entire world. And that's really important. And so you have Forge begin the process of turning our heroes into magical power beings or whatever to actually lock away the adversary reality to make sure that he can never come back ever again. Now, we also come to find out that because the reporter was recording everything, you have this video getting out to the entire world. Everyone is watching this, including Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler. And like I said earlier, they were 2 of the 3 characters who got injured in the Mutant Massacre storyline, and so they were removed from the team. But either way, back on Muir Island, they're seeing what the reporter is showing the world. The X-Men had given up their lives to save the entire world. To the world, the X-Men are now dead. And this is really huge. And for Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde, they're wondering what's next for them. Now, for these 2 characters, this is beginning the process of introducing another X-Men team, better known as Excalibur. Now, you didn't have Lady Roma appear after everyone had technically moved on with their lives, and she brings the X-Men back to life. Now, the reason why she does this because she said, listen, when it comes to the adversary, he can never be locked away. He plays a very important role when it comes to the multiverse. And so, unfortunately, he can never be locked away. You guys becoming the locks were not really going to stop him at all because he would just find another way to come into this reality. But right now he's being punished for what he has done, but he'll try again down the road. But either way, you have Storm say this works out perfectly then. The idea of them being alive, but the world believing that they are dead. And the reason why she is saying that because when it came to the X-Men, Storm and Magneto had this plan to make the world believe that they were dead. Because the X-Men had way too many different enemies just popping up left and right trying to kill off the X-Men. But on top of that, friends and families were also being attacked as well because their connection with the X-Men. And so this is Storm saying this works out great. If the world believes that we are dead, then we are able to move behind the scenes and get payback against every single person who has done us wrong. And so now the X-Men are alive again and are able to continue on with their mission. And Storm has her powers again. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.